The door of the rusty nail bar exploded inward with a thunderous bang, shattering the lazy hum of country music and clinking glasses. A hulking figure stormed through, his leather jacket creaking like old bones, tattoos snaking up his neck like vines claiming a forgotten wall. His eyes, wild and bloodshot, locked onto the petite waitress behind the counter. Without a word, he barreled through the crowd, knocking over a stool that clattered to the floor. Patrons froze mid-sip, sensing the storm brewing. The waitress, Emma, barely had time to gasp before he grabbed her by the collar of her faded blue shirt and yanked hard. The fabric tore with a sickening rip, exposing her shoulder and chest to the dim neon lights. What everyone saw next didn't just stop the bar, it froze time itself, turning hardened drinkers into statues of shock and silent horror. Emma's skin wasn't the smooth, unmarred canvas they expected. Instead, a map of brutality etched her body, fresh purple bruises blooming like poisonous flowers across her collarbone, and older scars, jagged white lines that spoke of repeated violence, the kind that doesn't heal overnight. But it was the centerpiece that stole the breath from the room, a faded tattoo just above her heart, a small angel with wings folded protectively around a name, Lily, and a date that anyone in this small town would recognize. It was the same date as the tragic car accident 5 years ago that had claimed the life of Emma's 3-year-old daughter. Whispers had circulated for years about Emma's abusive ex-husband, the local mechanic who everyone knew but no one crossed. Yet here it was, inked in permanent ink, a memorial to her lost child amid the evidence of ongoing torment. The bar, usually a haven for gossip and laughter, turned tomb silent. Even the jukebox seemed to hold its tune. Emma stumbled back, clutching the remnants of her shirt, her face flushing with a mix of humiliation and terror. She was 32, but life had aged her beyond. Her years, crow's feet from sleepless nights, hands calloused from double shifts to make ends meet. She'd moved to this dusty corner of Montana after the accident, fleeing the city where her marriage had turned into a nightmare. Her ex, Travis, had been charming at first, a smooth-talking salesman who'd swept her off her feet, but alcohol and jealousy had twisted him into a monster. The beatings started small, a slap here, a shove there, escalating until the night he drove drunk with Lily in the car. The crash killed their daughter instantly, but Travis walked away with barely a scratch. Emma had stayed too long after that, trapped by fear and the false hope of change, until she finally fled with nothing but a duffel bag and a bus ticket. Working at the Rusty Nail was her lifeline. The owner, Old Man Harlan, gave her the job out of pity, knowing her story from the grapevine. The regulars, truckers, farmers, and a few lonely souls, tipped decently and left her alone. She smiled through the pain, hiding bruises under long sleeves, saving every penny for a fresh start somewhere Travis couldn't find her. But lately, he'd been sniffing around, showing up unannounced, demanding she come back. Last night, he'd cornered her in the parking lot, leaving those fresh marks as a reminder. Emma had cried herself to sleep, wondering if she'd ever escape the cycle. The biker, Jake Iron Mallory, stood there, his massive frame heaving with ragged breaths. At 45, he was a legend among the Hellfire Riders, a motorcycle club that roamed the highways like ghosts. His beard was streaked with gray, his knuckles scarred from bar fights and bad decisions. He'd rolled into town that evening with his crew, seeking a quiet beer after a long haul from Seattle. But quiet wasn't in the cards. When Emma had accidentally bumped his table while carrying a tray overloaded with pints, spilling beer across his lap, something snapped. Years on the road had made him quick to anger, a shield against the world that had taken so much from him. He hadn't meant to rip her shirt, not really. It was a grab gone wrong, fueled by frustration and the ghosts of his own past. But now, staring at those scars, he felt the world tilt. Jake's mind flashed back to his sister, Sarah. She'd been just like Emma, bright-eyed, full of dreams, until she married a man who promised the stars but delivered only fists. Jake had been overseas, serving in the Marines. When he got the call, Sarah was dead, beaten to death in her own home. He'd come home too late, the guilt gnawing at him like rust on his bike's frame. That's why he joined the club, to outrun the pain, to become the tough guy no one messed with. But toughness was a facade. Deep down, he carried Sarah's photo in his wallet, a reminder of the sister he couldn't save. Seeing Emma's tattoo, that angel guarding Lily, hit him like a freight train. It wasn't just the scars, it was the raw vulnerability, the silent cry for help that mirrored Sarah's unspoken pleas. The bar's silence shattered when a voice boomed from the doorway. "What the hell is going on here?" Travis strode in, his grease-stained overalls reeking of oil and cheap whiskey. He was a burly man in his late 30s, with a perpetual sneer and fists that clenched at the slightest provocation. He'd heard the commotion from across the street at his garage and came storming over, eyes narrowing on Emma's exposed skin. "You little, get over here!" He lunged toward her, but Jake stepped in front, a human wall of leather and muscle. "Not today, pal," Jake growled, his voice low and dangerous. The bar patrons shifted uneasily. Harlan behind the counter, gripping a baseball bat, a couple of farmers exchanging glances, finally stirred from their apathy. Travis laughed, a cruel bark. "Who are you? Some road trash thinking he's a hero? She's my wife, my business, ex-wife," Emma whispered, finding her voice. It was the first time she'd corrected him in public, her hands trembling as she pulled her shirt closed. The word hung in the air, empowering her like a spark in dry tinder. Jake glanced back at her, seeing the fire in her eyes amid the fear. It reminded him of Sarah's rare moments of defiance. "You heard the lady," he said, turning to Travis. "Time to leave." Travis swung first, a wild haymaker aimed at Jake's jaw. But Jake was faster, dodging and countering with a solid punch to the gut that doubled Travis over. The biker's crew, who'd been watching from their booth, stood up, forming a loose circle. Not to fight, just to back him up. The bar erupted into chaos, chairs scraping, voices rising in a mix of cheers and warnings. Harlan called the cops, his voice steady despite the shake in his hands. As Travis gasped for air, Jake knelt down, his face inches from the abusers. "I had a sister like her. You took her from me, men like you. But not this time." Travis snarled and tried to rise, but Jake pinned him with a boot on his chest. "You touch her again and you'll answer to me and every rider from here to the coast." The sheriff arrived minutes later, a no-nonsense woman named Deputy Ruiz who'd known about Travis's history but lacked evidence until now. With the bar as witnesses and Emma's bruises on full display, she cuffed him on the spot for assault and violation of the restraining order Emma had quietly filed months ago. As they hauled him away, Travis spat curses, but the fight was gone from his eyes. The bar exhaled collectively, the tension draining like air from a punctured tire. Emma collapsed into a booth, tears streaming down her face. Not from fear, but relief. Jake slid in across from her, his rough hands folding awkwardly on the table. "I'm sorry about the shirt," he muttered, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over her shoulders. It swallowed her small frame, but the gesture warmed her more than the leather ever could. "Why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Why help me? You don't even know me." Jake pulled out his wallet, flipping it open to Sarah's photo. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone to this. And I couldn't save her, but maybe I can help you save yourself." In the days that followed, the incident became town legend. Emma pressed charges, and with the support of the community, finally awakened from their silence, Travis was sentenced to prison. Jake stuck around longer than planned, his club helping Emma fix up her rundown apartment and even organizing a fundraiser for Lily's memorial fund, which supported other abuse survivors. Emma started therapy, learning to rebuild her shattered self-worth. She and Jake formed an unlikely bond, like siblings forged in fire. He'd visit on his rides, sharing stories of the road, reminding her that strength comes in many forms. Months later, as Emma stood behind the bar again, this time with a confident smile and a new tattoo, an open-winged angel symbolizing freedom, she reflected on that fateful night. The rusty nail had changed, patrons now looked out for each other, conversations turned to support rather than gossip. Jake's act of unintended revelation had ripped open more than her shirt. It had torn through the veil of indifference. The inspiring truth? Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and carry scars of their own. In a world quick to judge by appearances, it's the unexpected kindness that thaws the frozen hearts around us. Emma's story became a beacon. Speak up, stand tall, and remember that from the darkest moments, light can emerge, and sometimes all it takes is one ripped shirt to change everything.